Hi guys, as you can see, this is the July 3rd update for epicseven, and with it we have a lot of previews and I guess initial preambles to the summer units and the summer event. However, as a disclaimer, this is not the live stream or the event or the notice that will have all of the upcoming summer events. So with that, feel free to tune again in later in the future. I believe that should be coming on the 16th, but without further ado, let's get into it. If you've ever looked at your epicseven payment history and thought to yourself, yeah, that added up a bit too fast, you're not alone. But thanks to AppGallery, there's a way to get rewarded just for spending in epicseven. Right now, if you install epicseven through AppGallery, you'll get a $2 welcome coupon and more importantly, 20% cashback every time you make a PayPal purchase in game. Yes, you heard me right, and it also works on any Android device or emulator, so you don't need a Huawei phone at all. Let me break down how to do this, as honestly the setup's pretty easy. First, you'll start by clicking on the link in the pinned comment or description. You'll download AppGallery, then HMS Core, and following this, you'll create a Huawei ID, making sure your region is set to Brazil. From this, you'll then open AppGallery, search for epicseven, install it directly, and then log into your existing account like normal. Once you're in, you can head back to the promo page, hit get it now, and receive your $2 welcome coupon. But if you're looking for your cashback, you can then just purchase something using PayPal in game, and AppGallery will send you a 20% cashback coupon directly to your account. And then you could use it on ML Arya, Robin, or any character you want in the future. What are you waiting for? Just make sure to follow the steps as I've described and begin earning more with your spending in epicseven. Thanks again to AppGallery for sponsoring today's video though. So the first thing we should talk about is Argent Waves Huayang. This character honestly does look pretty cool, and aside from her design and honestly really cool live 2D animation, her skills, her constellations, and everything in between are pretty interesting. So first off, Huayang, interestingly this time around, is not a warrior, she's a thief, and with it she's also a Leo, which means that her damage is pretty high, all things considered. Now, in addition to this, when you take a look at some of her abilities, her S1 kicks and dispels a buff. Fine, that's whatever. However, as you read her S2, it reads that after an ally uses a non-attack skill, you activate Swallow Kick on the enemy, and this will target the highest defense character. And as per what they showed in the preview video, they essentially showed an Arunca being an ML Arunca, apologies, being kicked with this S2, and following this they used her S3. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, it reads that when you use Swallow Kick, it grants the caster attack buff for 2 turns and then attacks the enemy by leaping forward and increasing the combat readiness of the caster by, well, some amount that I guess they just haven't okay, I believe it's 50% if I'm not mistaken. Or is it? Oh, sorry, right here, it's 20%. That said, this is going to be a pretty high damage looking ability, though if you are going to be using this against characters that have mitigation, it might be a bit of a concern, as at least from what we saw, this new limited Huayang tried to kick an old ML Huayang, and she actually wasn't able to one-shot it despite doing a decent amount of damage to, of course, like an Arunca in a prior showcase. But then we have her S3, which is an AoE attack, and it increases the combat readiness of the caster in the back, or rather the ally in the back, by 50%, which is pretty cool, in addition to granting vigor to the caster for 2 turns. Now, interestingly as well here, the S2, if I'm not mistaken, after you have, or rather, if you activate the S2 while Huayang has vigor, it actually gives her an extra turn, which I'm not too certain as to how viable or how realistic this is going to be. I could definitely imagine some players or some teams using someone like Conqueror Lilius to, well, one-shot and deal with all the content in the game. But if you're trying to take this into something like RTA, or if someone ends up running faster characters like the Conqueror Lilius, I'm not too sure if this will actually be possible. Now, the next thing that we have to talk about is her artifact. Her artifact honestly looks pretty interesting, and it's pretty cool for a thief, but because it's a thief artifact, I do want to point out 2 things first. If I'm not mistaken, and unless if I have been deceived, they actually changed what was initially shown from her artifact base stats, and now instead of having flat HP, they've actually given her defense. Now, the only reason I could think for this being the case is because they're trying to cater to or account for the Gala Lilius. And while that's fine, truth be told, I'm not super sure if there's any character that really cares about the defense like that. And even for Gala, it is what it is. Now, the reason why I also say this artifact is cool, but maybe not the most game-breaking or broken of all time, is because, let's say, for instance, you are choosing to use this, or if you're choosing to play a thief nowadays, you'll actually prefer some of the other artifacts in the game. And if you don't have access to them, that's fine. But an artifact like Wind Rider, for instance, gives you a lot of, well, defensive capabilities in addition to a load of damage. And although ignoring damage sharing effects with this artifact is pretty strong, it's important to remember that, well, in most cases, just having the evasion, or not evasion, the invisibility, or the, I guess the stealth in this case, is pretty valuable, as some characters just don't like getting hit whatsoever. Now, of course, you could argue that in recent times there's more AoE characters in the game, like Abyssal Euphine and other characters that AoE, so it is what it is, but something to consider when considering or using this artifact. Now, in addition to this, they have a new side story that we have, and honestly, the art for this is pretty ridiculous and crazy. But following this, we also have a rewards table list, and honestly, the artifacts, or rather the gear alongside the portrait, the artifact, and a lot of the rewards that you're seeing here, including the stickers, look pretty cool. Now, in addition to this, we have another artifact we're being introduced to, which is a 10% increase hit chance artifact, critical hit chance artifact. However, in addition to this, there's also a 60% chance at max to grant critical hit damage for 1 turn to the user. Now, if I'm just keeping it completely straight and transparent, we've almost never had an artifact that really feels that good when it's free. There are some in some cases that are clearly designed for PvE, but this is honestly an artifact that, let's say for instance they had decided to increase this chance to 100% instead of 60, there's honestly a pretty decent there's a pretty decent chance that there's a character in the game that would prefer something like this. I can definitely imagine a character that already has a built-in attack buff, therefore, or then using something like this for the attack, or maybe for the critical hit damage buff, and trying to nuke or one-shot off of it, especially with the free 10% crit chance. But as it's only 60%, I don't know if this is necessarily going to be something that people care for, as again, it's a bit RNG. Now, in addition to this, alongside the side story, there's a new, I guess like a bit of a Vampire Survivors type event, which honestly looks pretty cool. If you've seen it in other gacha games, honestly, the one or the way that they've been introduced or ran in other games is pretty interesting. But honestly, just from the activity itself, it seems pretty cool. I'm a big fan, honestly, of games branching out and trying to introduce like pretty fun mini games like this, especially when they have good rewards and such. And it does look like it's a bit fleshed out. Now, in addition to this, they also have new EEs that have been added to epicseven, and these are honestly pretty game-breaking, or I shouldn't say game-breaking, but pretty ridiculous for the characters that you're going to see. Now, the first one is AMID. Now, I used to joke about AMID being a character that they would give a speed EE to, and that's primarily because, as I'm sure you could probably tell, AMID can oftentimes be used to speed up or outspeed other characters, and if I'm not mistaken, AMID, I believe, has a 115 base speed, and this, therefore, or I think it's actually 117 or 115. I'll have to check back on that, I apologize. Actually, if I just go to Cecilia bot real quick, I think we can see. Where is she? $117 base speed, yes. So 117 base speed makes this character 127 now. And truthfully, this is honestly pretty crazy. Not just because, of course, she's now, well, I think more realistically after speed tuning, she's more like 126 or 125. But regardless, having a 125, 126, 127 base speed character like AMID is crazy because, of course, she has the quickness or the swiftness buff built into her kit, and she also has the attack buff. Now, that isn't to say that she isn't even more crazy with what they're adding to her, as they're actually giving her now 3 new EEs, or 3 new EE effects, which she can use. And the first one honestly sounds the craziest, which is a attack or greater attack buff instead of the attack buff normally. And now, in addition to this, when using Zephyr, you can now apply the same effect to the ally with the highest combat readiness push, except for the caster. And these, in addition, or honestly any of these effects that you're seeing here, these Zephyr effects, they're okay. However, I think in more recent times, people have been using AMID for speed or for faster teams, though there are some teams that do end up using her as somewhat of a I don't want to say anti-cleave, but an anti-debuff type character. And in that case, I think that's where these Zephyr effects can be pretty crazy. However, just the greater attack buff and the 10 speed alone will probably bring this back onto the radar for a lot of players that are trying to play cleave or speed, which I think is absolutely fantastic, though maybe not super great or balanced for those that want to play slower. Now, in addition to this, we're seeing the Wandering Sid EE, and this is maybe not so insane compared to the others. However, I think what is pretty interesting about this EE is that number one of the biggest faults or one of the biggest difficulties right now in epicseven is honestly landing or having enough effectiveness to land against some of the high ER or the ER stacking characters in the game. With that, Sid honestly did feel like a character that alongside his counterparts like Araminta or other debuffers, including, I don't know, like Summertime Iseria or Blooming Litica, these have felt like characters that do need a bit of love and a bit of help in terms of the effectiveness department, as they are being used more regularly to either soul burn, ignore ER, but then need to use their own effectiveness to debuff or some combination of that. With that, I think that honestly the decreased combat readiness of all allies by 15% when using narrative retcon, pretty crazy just in terms of slowing down and pacing down things. The natural storyteller amplifying the combat readiness increase and the decrease value by 10%. Maybe not the most insane thing in the entire world. And in addition to this, honestly, the natural storyteller S1 increasing the combat readiness push by 20% when you use continuous strike. These don't feel nearly as game breaking as, again, for me, just decreasing the combat readiness push of all enemies by 15% when using narrative retcon. And for me, I think that this is honestly going to be a pretty valuable or pretty interesting EE for both these characters. I think they both kind of build into or kind of accentuate or improve the natural gameplay goal of a lot of these characters. And with that, I'm pretty excited for both these EEs. They do honestly appear to benefit the the speedier, more fast cleave playstyle that I myself have been kind of, well, I'm sure at this point you guys know I've been kind of abiding by this playstyle for a while, and with that, I'm pretty excited for both these EEs. Now, beyond this, they also announced the raid updates for these characters, or rather for limited Hua Young, which is going to be on the 3rd, which, if I'm not mistaken, should be tomorrow. However, in addition to this, they've also announced the release date or the summon banner date for ML Tenebria, the other ML Tenebria, and with it, honestly, all of the adjustments and all the announcements that they've shown thus far are pretty cool. However, I've also seen, or they also had this announcement in terms of the summon currency. These twin librarian bookmarks in the medals, if I'm not mistaken, is used for this summoning up here, if I'm correct. I don't know exactly what it's for. Presumably it's for this. If it's not, I'll keep an update, or I'll update you guys in the comment section. However, they also added additional items to the normal shop, and this includes Molagoras that you can now purchase, which I think is pretty crazy, greater equipment charms, and all these other stones. Now, as far as I could tell, these are, again, since they're being added to the normal shop, this just means that, I guess, in theory, this would basically allow you as a new player to just catch up as soon as possible, or however quickly as you want, if you just wail or throw your money at the wall. And with this, honestly, I think it's pretty cool for players that want to catch up. Now, this doesn't help free-to-play players much, honestly, unless you're really desperate, but it is nice that you don't have to activate or wait for a pack to get resources if you're cut off or unable to buy one of these resources to begin with. Anyways, though, guys, honestly, this patch, this update, pretty cool. Excited to see what's coming in the future for the summer patch as well. But just these two EEs, honestly, I was really excited for. I get it, I'm a bit biased. For slow players, I guess this is kind of a bad morning for you as well. But in any case, pretty excited about all the updates. Love Vampire Survivors. Have literally played it in every single gacha game that they've introduced or had some sort of replica of this in, and have always had fun, honestly, as I'm a big Hololive and, or rather I should say Holocure and Vampire Survivors fan. But yeah, rewards look cool, everything looks cool. Good job, epicseven. Thanks again for watching though, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.